Welcome to another ish episode of The Thread. I'm going to actually explain what The Thread's all about. I got a couple of other people that said they'd be on tonight that have never seen this before. So, The Thread was a concept that came up from a pastor friend of mine who said that the scripture here, from Genesis to Revelation, either streams to the cross or from the cross. And it goes through Scripture like a thread, if you think about it, linking all of this text together that's in this book right here. And I always thought of it in my mind's eye as a blood red thread. So when I decided to do this study, I just decided to call this The Thread after praying about it for a while. And we've been doing this for about a year, so let's see where we go here. We've been going through the miracles of Jesus. I'm going to talk about a miracle that it hits a little bit different. It comes from the book of Mark, which, here's a little biblical trivia for you. They believe is the first biblical text, the gospel that was released. They believe this one was written first. But it's in Mark 7. And it's in verses 31 through 37. And I'm not going to read these. I'm just going to give you a synopsis. But I'm going to tell you this is a short and powerful account of Jesus healing a man who couldn't hear or speak. And when you look at this at first, Jesus is going to raise people from the dead. He's going to do all these crazy miracles. This seems like a really simple miracle. But there's so much more to this. There's so much more depth to this. Because this story is not about one man's healing. It's a reminder to us that Jesus meets us where we are. He cares deeply for us, and he brings wholeness in ways that you and I may never expect. So I'm going to set the scene here. See, Jesus is traveling from a region called Decapolis. And when some people brought a deaf-mute man to him and his disciples. And they were begging for help. Aren't you so glad we got people in our lives that when we can't seem to make it to the feet of Jesus ourselves, they come to the feet of Jesus for us? That's what's happening here. They brought him to the feet of Jesus. This man didn't come on his own. His friends brought him. So glad for people that do this. But that already says a lot about community and how sometimes we need others to help us get closer to Jesus. I can't account for the amount of times that I've had a pastor friend or a mentor put their arm around me and say, look, you're headed down the wrong path. This is the way you should go. They brought this man to the feet of Jesus. And what's really unique about here, though, is Jesus is going to handle this situation differently than he's handled everything else so far. Jesus always heals people in front of a crowd. He always does it in front of everybody. But this man, he takes him aside privately. In this case, it's not about putting on a show. It's a personal thing. And Jesus connects with this man in a way that's intimate and specific to this guy's needs. Think about that. See, Jesus does something unusual. First, he puts his fingers in the man's ears. Then he spits and touches the man's tongue. Now, let's be real here for a minute. That sounds a bit strange to our Western culture. But it's deeply symbolic in Jewish culture. Because Jesus is physically engaging this man's condition. He's touching his ears and he's touching his mouth. Showing us that he is fully present in this situation. That he is fully invested in this man's healing. See, Jesus then looks up to the heaven and he says this word. He said, Ephphatha, which means to be opened. And I mispronounced that, I guarantee you, but it's got PH, epitha. I can't say it right. It's okay. Instantly, the man's ears are open. Instantly, his tongue is loosened. And instantly, this man can speak and hear. But this isn't just a physical transformation. This is a complete restoration of the man's ability to communicate with others, which he had never been able to do in his life, as far as we know. See, people are blown away because they probably heard of Jesus' miracles. But to hear about a miracle and to see a miracle firsthand is slightly different. I had heard about healing before I was a member of a Pentecostal church. It's really cool to hear about. But when you see a dude get out of a wheelchair and walk, it's a totally different experience. This is what they're experiencing here. And they cannot stop talking about it. Even though Jesus tells them not to tell anybody, they cannot stop. Because their amazement leads them to praise, saying that he has done everything well. He even makes the deaf hear and the mute speak. Complete healing. So what's the message? Everybody's like, what's in it for me, Kevin? Because you talk about all this biblical stuff, but it happened 1,000, 2,000 years ago. What's in it for me? See, this story isn't about the miracle, believe it or not. It's packed with lessons about Jesus' character. It's packed with lessons of how we can relate to him. So let's start up with the first one. The first thing I took away from this is Jesus meets us personally. See, the way Jesus takes this man aside, the way he shows care for this man, and he doesn't treat him as just another case or another chance to impress the crowd who he didn't need to impress in the first place. He took him aside. And this should remind us of something. That even in our greatest struggles, Jesus meets us where we are. Whether it's our individual struggles, which many of us have, and he works in ways that are uniquely suited to who we are. I mean, the way he works in my wife's life and the way he works in my life are different. Because we are different people. He meets us where we are in our own circumstances. You should take great comfort in it. That you have a Jesus that knows you so well that he can meet you where you are. The second lesson I want to teach you here is that healing goes beyond the physical. I'm here to tell you today that Jesus doesn't partially do something. And in this case, he didn't either. The man's healing isn't about restoring his hearing and speech necessarily. It's about restoring his ability to connect with the world. See, Jesus isn't just fixing the problem. He doesn't come to us just to fix our problems. He brings wholeness to every part of our life. A complete restoration. A lesson we had a couple weeks ago talked about he doesn't do anything halfway. He goes beyond the physical. He restored the soul, the mouth, the ears, the heart, all of it. Complete healing. Third one is faith and community matter. We got to remember that this man did not come to Jesus on his own. Others brought him. My friends, this tells you how important community is, if you think about it, and how your faith can help bring others closer to God. The way you exhibit your faith is being watched more than you know. I can tell you that. Because sometimes we need to be the ones carrying someone else through our prayers, through our encouragement, sometimes even through our actions. But we're called to be the hands and feet of Jesus. Community does matter, my friends. Fourth lesson I got from this is Jesus' compassion is unmatched. You cannot out-compassion Jesus. Jesus sighs and looks to heaven. This is a sign of his deep compassion for this man and his suffering. It's a reminder to me and you that Jesus is not this distant, indifferent being. We serve a Jesus. We serve a God who feels our pain. We serve a God who cares about what we're going through. We serve a God who walked this earth, died on a cross, rose 3 days together, and ascended again because he loved you and I. His compassion is unmatched, my friends. He met this man with deep compassion, pulled him aside so that he wouldn't be a spectacle, which he had probably been with his speech his whole life, and dealt with it in compassion. The next one is, I'm going to repeat something I've said 1,000 times. Praise is the natural response. The crowd's amazement leads them to praise Jesus, which is the right response when you witness God's work. Because when that dude in that church got up out of that wheelchair and rocked, I listened to 5,000 people go crazy. I was one of those, by the way. But when we experience his power in our lives, when we have those moments in our lives that we're like, there's no way this had to be a God thing, our first instinct should be gratitude and worship. Not trying to figure out what's going on. Trust that God's in the middle of your circumstance, and your response will be to praise. So how does this apply to me and you? Because it still seems kind of distant, but it touches us in ways that you can't imagine if you think about it. Because we all have moments when we feel broken. Just like the dude in this story, we all have areas where we feel deaf or mute. We feel disconnected. We feel like we're struggling. We feel stuck in our relationship with Jesus or in life in general. This passage reminds you and I that Jesus restores what is broken. No matter how hopeless we may see it is, no matter how far in the dark we think we are, no matter how far the light of the tunnel seems to be, I serve a Jesus that restores. He can restore you when you feel broken. When you need to bring others to Jesus. Remember, these people brought the man to Jesus. I can't express that enough. They didn't heal him themselves because their faith and actions made a difference, though. They're like, we have heard of this guy. We really feel for our friend here or our family member here that they've had this problem. We've been to every doctor there is. We've been to every witch doctor there is, and it's just not working. But I heard about this guy, and he's coming down the road, and we've got to get him there. And they got him there. Their faith, their actions made all the difference. Because who in your life, my friends, might need you to bring them closer to God? Who do you know that doesn't know Jesus? That's in your circle. Pastor Kevin can't reach them because he doesn't know them. That you could help lead to Jesus. Who do we know that is a Christian who's really, really struggling, but they're not talking to me, but they're your best friend? What are we doing with that? We need to bring others to the feet of Jesus, because we can't do it ourselves. We can encourage, we can love, we can pray for, but we cannot heal. You can't do it. And the next thing I want you to understand is when you experience God's work, like the crowd, don't keep it to yourself. I have had people say, wow, you've told your story so much about your deliverance from alcoholism so many times. We're really tired of hearing it. We love you, but how can I shut up about it? It's a miracle in my life. How can I not shout it from the mountaintops? I understand that sometimes I go a little crazy with it, but that's how I feel. Because we have to share what God is doing in our life. Because if we share what God's doing in my life, maybe somebody that I know or that I encounter will say, hey, maybe he can do that for me. Maybe if I seek Jesus, he can take my addiction away. He can take my marital problems and fix them. He can make my broken life and put it back together. Think about that for a minute. See, I want to, in conclusion, Mark 37, 31 through 37 is a beautiful reminder of Jesus' compassion, power, and ability to bring wholeness. This scripture challenges to trust him with our brokenness. It challenges to lean on community. And it challenges to respond with gratitude when we see his work in our lives. So whether you are in need of healing or you're supporting someone that is, or you're simply sitting here tonight and you're reflecting, man, God's good. This story speaks straight to you. Because Jesus just doesn't do miracles. Jesus transforms lives. I have said multiple times that if you show me a person that says they've encountered Jesus and they're the same they were 10 years ago, they didn't encounter Jesus. Because the Jesus I serve changes things. The Jesus I experienced changed me. The Jesus that I experienced in that church where that dude got walked affected me, and it definitely affected that person. Jesus just doesn't do miracles, my friends. He transforms lives. So I want to encourage you. Let Jesus work in your life today. And don't be afraid to share. If he does something amazing in your life, shout it from the rooftops, my friends. After all, he's done everything well. Guys, that's all I've got tonight. I love you all. You have a blessed evening. I'm going to hang out with my wife for the rest of the night, so y'all take care.